old and new, welcome to Stupid Little Games, the podcast where we talk about all things gaming from the inside out. This is actually a very special episode. We're not going to have our regular format today because we are going to be talking all about the Video Game Awards, which happened last night. We are recording on Friday the 13th in December, which is awesome. And I have an old friend guest with me today. Our very first podcast guest was Hamish Young. And if you want to know all about his gaming bona fides and hear all about him, please go back and listen to the very first episode. It's called Going 140 Miles Per Hour on the Autobahn, and it was a fun time. So I thought it would be cool to have him back, and we're going to talk about the Game Awards. Hamish, hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me back.
Welcome back.
Clearly, it didn't go so badly as
No, it went quite well,
so
actually. Your episode is the most downloaded. It was the first episode, and it was kind of the one that I did like the most promo blast because it was the first one, but it's also like been out the longest. And so, but I think it's really cool that yours has the most downloads. So yeah, go back and listen to that episode. Hamish has been a game director for a very long time. He's also a very cool dude who knows a lot about games. So I thought you were the perfect person to chat about the Game Awards and get like a real insider perspective, even more than me, on the stuff that happened last night. So what we're going to do is not going to be our regular episode where we talk about our current obsessions and then have an interview and then play a stupid little game. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Game Awards. So we're going to talk about all of the actual announcements, and we're going to go through every single one. So stay tuned to hear about all of the wonderful announcements from like an insider game dev perspective. And then we're going to talk a bit about the awards because like the awards happened. We're very excited for the people that that won those awards. We'll talk a bit about those. And then we will actually give away some of our very own stupid little awards for categories that we have made up. And so yeah, it'll be a good time. Stay with us and learn all about the Game Awards if you weren't able to watch, which it was a very long 3+ hours. So if you didn't watch it, just listen to this and we got you covered. So I would love to know what your overall feelings were about the 3 hours plus that we saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started off really well. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the pre-show kind of, it's full-on show. I don't quite know why they separate it that way, given the setup. But
yeah, it was weird because I forgot, what is her name? Do you know her name?
Sydney, I can't remember her surname.
Yeah, we'll just say Sydney.
Yeah.
Sydney Game Awards. So Sydney Game Awards did the pre-show, and basically, if you didn't watch the episode, Sydney was up on a little dais to the side of the stage. You could see the stage behind her, and she gave out a bunch of awards. And they actually had the folks come up very briefly
for some of the awards.
For some of them,
yeah.
Which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, they skipped on the esports ones. They just kind of went through without that. But no, I thought that format, and it clipped through. Like it was only half an hour. They got through a lot in half an hour. They did. And it kind of, for me. We'll talk about it, but the next phase of the show felt bloated relative to the pre-show. And I felt like if the pre-show format was a little bit more kept to for the main show, I think you would have seen something a little bit more focused and feel a little bit more gratifying. But it's a balance issue. And we're going to talk about it today, but like there's different ways of thinking about this show, right? Like it's a big advert for a bunch of things. Yeah. That's how they pay the bills. Yeah. It has to be entertaining. People want to watch it. I mean,
Statler and Waldorf said it like it's basically commercials with a few awards sprinkled in.
Yeah, and but it's also an award show. There's a number of things they're trying to balance. I think every year they get a bit closer to something that can be a format that could survive a long time.
Why do you think they broke up the pre-show the way they did?
It's been true for a little while where they initially had a pre-show where it was like just some early world premiere stuff just to kind of bring people in. And then they started putting some awards there and you're like, okay, now it's just show. Like it's kind of weird to do it that way. But I like the tighter format than the main show to some extent. So
if everything was like the pre-show, we would have been out of there in 2 hours.
Right. And more people would have got awards on stage and there would have been a little less kind of faffing around. So yeah, I mean, I think that I still think there's a way to edit it down to be a little tighter. And that's not to say that any of the games that they showed shouldn't have been showed.
Right.
It's more just the in-between stuff being not so short as to be like throwaway, which some of the awards felt like, especially in the main show.
Yeah. Where when Jeff Keighley's just up there saying, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and now here's a minute and a half for this new trailer.
Right, yeah. For someone who sounds so passionate about a bunch of stuff, when he does the awards, he doesn't sound passionate anymore.
Yeah.
Which is weird because the whole point is a celebration of gaming. And I think that's the biggest weirdness from my point of view of him being the presenter. Is like, like Sydney actually did a much better job of presenting the awards than Jeff did. Jeff is best when he's like, and he's like getting gushing around, various things.
You can definitely tell that he's very passionate about games. He's just not quite passionate about formats.
Yeah, and I also just think that, gaming is fashion, right? Yeah. And so like things that have been last year, it feels like old hat to some extent. Yeah. And so that it's not the new exciting thing. It's the thing that we already know what it is.
I kind of feel like, so Jeff's been doing this for a very long time. And I speak about him like I know him. I don't know him. But, Jeff Game Awards, he's been doing it for like 30 years almost now because he's been doing the Game Awards for 10 years. He did the Spike Awards like before that. And then I think I read that his father did some sort of gaming awards a million years ago for and he was like 14 years old and interned with that. So he's actually been doing these type of awards. So I'm wondering if he's continuing to do it because he just wants to host it.
Well, no, I definitely think there's an element of him wanting to host these things. I'm just saying that like at this stage, he should host the bits that he cares about the most and let someone else host the bits that he's less passionate about.
I also think that, it's supposed to be spectacle, right? That's why you want to have it on this huge stage. I thought the stage direction was actually really great. I loved I'm a huge like production behind the scenes with the clipboard type of person. So just the stage and when they had the orchestra out there, I thought it was really amazing. But usually when you're having that sort of spectacle, you get like a huge name to host these things because they're going to draw in the people. They know how to be super charismatic, saying things that might not be very interesting to most people, So I think he just really just wants to host these things.
I don't have a problem with him doing hosting duties. I think the bigger issue, and like I said, the staging was great. I think the fact they let the devs who won the awards talk, I think was great. I just like for a whole bunch of games that won like awards, like, there's a whole bunch of them that weren't shown, like best action adventure game. Yeah. Right? Admittedly, it was Astrobot again. So like, it's okay. They did get to go up on stage, but it's like that's like one of the major genres. They didn't, best art direction, right?
Yeah. I feel like they could have done something really cool with best art direction. Because
best art direction, best audio design, what's the other ones? Best independent game, right?
Yeah.
Admittedly,
Balatro,
like won a bunch anyway.
So we're kind of thinking of this as like the Oscars of the video game world, right? Like, are we being unfair to them?
No,
talking about these things?
I think the AIAS awards are, the Oscars and the BAFTA awards, the BAFTAs and so on. Like,
what do AIAS mean?
The Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. It's literally the game equivalent of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which runs the Oscars. So, and you got GDC awards and so on. Like there are awards for developers. It's not that, like, I'm not suggesting that this turns into some big dev awards thing to some extent, but it's just kind of a little bit weird to have the awards feel so throwaway because it comes across as not really caring. Like it's that subtext thing, right? Like, if you have, I don't know, 10 minutes of a skit between Laura Bailey and
Aaron Paul.
Yeah. And then they say, and here's the awards, blah, 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 and move on. I don't know, it just feels a little unbalanced. And I'm not suggesting it suddenly turns into, the GDC awards or something like that.
From the business standpoint, do games have to pay anything to get nominated for things? Like, how does it actually work on the back end? Because I actually don't know.
No, so I mean, generally the case is that the main kind of income for those things comes from companies wanting to promote their new thing, or like, rather than being part of the awards. It's also why they kind of skip over awards so quickly, because if people were paying, I think they would be annoyed by the lack of exposure essentially caused by that. People tend to have to pay for their own getting there and travel and hotel. The awards aren't paying for that. Usually the winners know, like, at least if you twist their arm, you'll find out beforehand, because it's like, you're asking me to pay a lot of money to go to a thing. Only,
is it worth it for me to be there?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why when we saw was it Purnell? I can't remember her name from Fallout.
Oh yeah.
When I saw her there, I'm like, okay, Fallout 1.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That's just that was a given. And so you sometimes when you see who's in the crowd, you can tell who's going to win, because they're there. Kind of let people know so that it's worth them turning up.
I'm going to be that person to tell people that they should come, because I bet people get very excited.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fun thing. It's one of those things though that it like if you, I mean, I was lucky enough to get nominated for a BAFTA, and you don't find out from those. You just kind of turn up because it's the BAFTAs,
right? You're not going to not go to the BAFTAs,
right? Especially if you've been nominated. I think with these, because the awards aren't taken so seriously, you kind of need a bit more of a motivation to be kind of brought along.
Also, these aren't movie stars and like folks that can just throw down thousands of dollars to go to, where was it? In San Francisco? No. Where was it? Somewhere in California.
Yeah, I think it's LA. But,
like these are game devs. I mean, and I wouldn't have $3,000 to just be like, yeah, I'll just go on a whim. And yeah, that's not something that I could do. So I guess I appreciate them saying like, no, it probably behooves you to be there in person.
Yeah, generally though, I mean, if you're winning some of these awards, you've been successful enough that there should be some money in the kitty at least to do some of these promotional things.
Do you get any money for winning?
No. But I just mean in terms of just like the halo effect of those things.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is a little sad that they haven't quite found the right balance with the award part. I think it just, once again, it doesn't need to be a tremendous amount, but just like treating the awards like they did in the pre-show and not kind of just skipping through them quite so flippantly, I think would help them balance the show, but also encourage people to come without being like, have I won already?
Yeah.
Actually kind of.
How do you do that without making it 5 hours long instead of?
Because I think you can cut a lot of slack. Like we're going to talk about it, but there's a lot of slack in the show. And as I said, like, I think if you look at the pre-show, it zips through pretty quickly. And you don't have big, long kind of pieces. I also think, just in terms of, while we're talking about show structure, it was very ambiguous when they went to ads versus showing you trailers.
Yeah, I was trying to write down everything, and I was writing down some trailers, and then it goes into just a regular Xbox commercial, play Xbox Anywhere, cool. But I was like, oh wait, I'm writing down something about a fucking ad. So then I went back and I was like, was this actually a commercial or was this an announcement? And I had to kind of check.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that doesn't help, because, then you're like using the music as your break, because you're, like, I understand.
And you're conflating like stuff that like, I don't need to see this. This doesn't need to be in this, but it's like, no, that's just a commercial break. No, I get that very much.
But I thought overall the show was good. I think it does go on too long. I think if you could cut it down, it would be an easier watch. I mean, like, it basically starts at 7:30 and it didn't stop for a good, 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it needs to be quite that long. And I think it'll be puncher if it isn't. And I know they try and keep the big thing to the end so that people watch the end. But the majority of people, if I wasn't doing it for this, I'd actually probably just wait the next day.
Yeah, because you can just find out very quickly on
Yeah.
social media like who won.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get to talking about some of the actual announcements, some of the things that made the show so long. There were a lot. There were like 54 announcements / trailers, something like that. There was a whole bunch.
Yeah, I mean, to varying levels of scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you excited about?
Well, it's interesting. Like a lot of these things are either things that we kind of suspected were coming or whatever. I think let me start with rather than the things that I like the most. There's some curious things.
Yeah, give me some curious things.
The Witcher 4 trailer. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously looks gorgeous, but if you read the small print, it says it was running real time on an unannounced NVIDIA card.
Oh, does that mean it's going to be out in like 2028?
Well, what it means is it's running on a 50 series, which isn't out yet.
Yeah,
probably the top end of that. So that was kind of interesting in terms of just like in the small print going, this is running real time, but right. So I think those things are interesting. As a dev, you kind of you keep an eye out for some of these things.
I was looking at a bunch of the like this is in engine or this is not gameplay, and just like no, this isn't gameplay. Yeah,
so kind of semi-announcing an NVIDIA card without announcing it's always fun. I think that in general, Sword's got a good outing this year. Like there's an awful lot of fantasy with swords and sci-fi with swords and those things. It seems, like you see the trends of like what's kind of heavy and what's not.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about there's a little bit of racing games, a little bit of, there's a football game, but like mostly it's all kind of RPG-ish, whether a Japanese style anime RPG or Western style, like hack and slash type stuff. So I'm always interested in what isn't that. There are a few cozy games as well that we could talk through, and I noticed that we can talk about Catley at some point, I'm sure.
Oh. Yeah.
But in general, there is still a lack, although there was some present here, of contemporary games. And when I say contemporary games, I include anything historical. So the Project Sentry, which looks interesting. The Mafia game looks interesting. Like, there's a bunch of games here that are contemporary-ish. There's still very few, far in between. Everything is still pretty much sci-fi and fantasy by and large.
I'm surprised that there was no trailer or anything for GTA 6.
I'm not. They don't need to do it.
They just don't need to spend the money.
I mean, who are they going to persuade to buy the game?
That's true.
That isn't already going to buy the game.
When they won like the most anticipated game, like, so Hamish made a great spreadsheet for us to kind of talk about and look at today. And there's a place on the notes and I just wrote fucking duh.
Sure. I mean, we got the Game Awards before we got GTA 6, you know, like that's been the meme for this year, right? We got this before GTA 6, so. But
it would have been a cool place to maybe have like a new trailer. Like I know their original trailer was really, really good.
Rockstar don't work like that. Mm. They just don't work like that. Like they'll do it on their own beat.
Yeah. Good for them.
I think they were one of the first big groups to pull out of E3 way back, because they were just like, we don't need it. We don't want to be in the noise. We'll do our own thing. We're big enough that everyone will pay attention anyway. Speaking
of E3, like now that E3 is no longer a thing, do you think that Game Awards is filling some of that space?
Yeah. So
there was even a joke about it, which was great.
Well, don't forget there's the Summer Game Fest as well.
And then like Xbox Showcase and all of the companies doing the publishers doing kind of their own things.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that the E3 used to be where a lot of the big announcements were, but its real function was for retail buyers to buy in stock for Christmas or for the holiday period. And that's just not necessary anymore. So yeah, you still need a few big beats throughout the year for big announcements. The Game Awards is definitely like one of only a few places. It's probably the biggest right now in terms of places you do big announcements.
Yeah.
they've got that going for them. What I did find interesting though was that compared to a lot of film stuff and those things, the games industry is more naturally international than like in the Oscars. And I know it's not really a comparison, but it's like best foreign film, and then that's about it.
Yeah.
But in the games industry, as we saw with the number of translators that were on the stage, like it is truly international from jump. I do think certain continents are missing, right? So, you've got America, Asia and Europe, but there's no real African presence, and there's no South American presence and so on. Like there's some few notable areas where we're not as international as we could be, but we're definitely not as English centric as maybe the movies has been. Although, Indian film and so on, and Korean films have really more recently become established. Once again, no real Indian presence, in the Game Awards and so on. I hope that we can find a way to broaden the set of countries that are really producing games. And once again, it's not necessarily about budget. Like, as you can see, like
Balatro.
right. It's not necessarily. It is about access to markets and education and those things as much as it is about who's throwing splashing cash around. So,
well, let's talk about some of the actual announcements. There were so many. There were so many. So,
well, let's start with the pre-show.
Yeah,
let's just do it in alphabetical order a little bit.
Okay.
So, right at the top of the show, Ninja Gaiden as Shinobi, made by the people who did Streets of Rage and Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
It
looked cool.
Great way to start, because
when it started, it was just like, oh, Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's also like, it's not the highest budget game, but it looks cool, looks fun, like a good way to start the show. I think the One Move Away 3D packing game, which is basically inverse unpacked.
Yeah, I was like, is this the unpacking folks that are just doing it? It's not. But
No.
when I was watching the thing, I was like, oh, this looks like something that I would play. Because unpacking was a wonderful, wonderful game. It's like 2 hours. If you haven't played unpacking, you really, really should.
But weirdly, so unpacking felt very fresh.
Yeah.
This feels like somebody played unpacking. We're like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in 3D. It just feels a little cynical. We'll find out whether the actual game itself is like that, but it just feels a little. I take point A and I take point B, and I'll just.
They were like, I can also have environmental storytelling, except now we're moving houses and putting stuff in cars.
Well, unpacking is still moving houses. That's the thing, right? So it's like, yeah. Anyway, so cynical me is just like, I don't know how innovative this really is.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll see.
Slay the Spire 2 looked really cool.
It is, but it's such a known quantity that that's cool. It's nice to see a trailer, but it's it's not going to move the needle. Likewise, the DLC for Dave the Diver, in the jungle.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked Dave the Diver. It was a lot of fun. It was like, oh, you're diving, you're catching things, and it's like, oh, Eldritch Horror, cool. Surprise Eldritch Horror, kind of like Dredge. But I mean, cool, yeah.
Well, they did a crossover with Dredge.
Did they?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I
it's
feel
one of
dumb
the
for not knowing
DLCs.
that because I love Dredge and I liked Dave the Diver.
Yeah. They did some sort of crossover.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Think as Thieves. This is Warren Spector's game. It looks fun. I do feel like, I don't know. A lot of Warren Spector's games recently have not really panned out.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays.
It looks cool. I mean, it's going to be multiplayer. Like, multiplayer stealth is always interesting. But yeah, I really like the art style. The art style looks really cool, and like the setting looks really cool. So, I mean,
it'll come down to whether it's actually fun.
Yeah. I mean, it looked kind of whimsical, like it's not taking itself too seriously, and those are the kind of games that I kind of like. So I'll try it. Yeah,
the difficulty with multiplayer and whimsy is getting that balance right. Like, Team Fortress 2 kind of gets the balance right, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to get right. Shadow Labyrinth.
Yeah. Pac-Man.
Pac-Man meets Dead Cells.
Pac-Man meets Dead Cells. which I think it's cool. I mean, I don't think it's not really my type of game, but I will probably watch someone else play it.
Yeah.
It seems neat because it's fucking Pac-Man.
Yeah, I've been playing through Nine Souls recently, and it gave me a bunch of Nine Souls vibes as well. So it looks fun.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it was Pac-Man because I think Jeff is this still doing pre-show? So it was
Sydney.
She was like, and this story has been told many times before, but not in this way. And I was just like, what does that mean? And then it's like, oh, it's fucking Pac-Man. Gotcha. Then we got Steel Paws. All right, cool.
Yeah, Yu Suzuki. We'll see. I put down Mega Man with a girl, but I don't know if it's that at all. But it very similar kind of robotic kind of arm look.
Yep. And then we got Tales of the Shire, which I've actually seen a bunch of people already playing this. I think it's either early access or they did a long demo of it. I mean, it looks really cute. If you really like Lord of the Rings and you really like cozy games, then that is maybe the game for you. Yeah. I like cozy games, but I don't go crazy for like all the Lord of the Rings stuff.
It feels like for the people who got bored of The Sims or Animal Crossing, right? And if you're kind of into Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, it feels slightly weird in the sense of like, the whole Hobbit kind of lifestyle, but who am I to criticize? I think
cute.
It's cute. I just think it's not that the game isn't cute. It's more that applying that IP to it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's kind of okay.
Who did that game?
Weta.
Oh, it's Weta. Okay. Yeah. Are they just trying to get into everything?
They always have been. Yeah, I mean, basically, Weta is like so. What's his first name? Jackson. Peter Jackson. He basically is trying to take the same path as George Lucas did.
Yeah.
So Weta, is like ILM, and he's kind of, done the same thing except kind of with Lord of the Rings or whatever on with Star Wars. Private Division, I think, is Ubisoft's originals label.
Okay.
But Private Division is definitely one of the big. I think it's Ubisoft, but it's one of the big publishers' originals labels.
I'm sure Tales of the Shire will sell well because it's Lord of the Rings property.
Yeah.
Stallcraft Operations. I didn't really have much thoughts about this. It's like, all right.
It's like I wrote down Minecraft cutesy GTFO.
What does GTFO mean?
Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out. Okay. I was like, does that mean something different in the gaming space other than get the fuck out?
And but I don't know what it is. It didn't excite me, I have to say.
We got Midnight Murderer Club.
Yeah, so these guys did Knockout City, which wasn't particularly successful, but they're trying another kind of multiplayer kind of game that's not, dodgeball, but it could be fun. Once again, it just comes down to how it plays.
Yeah. And then Kiora. I really liked Core Keeper. I thought Core Keeper was fun. I played that actually recently. So this is kind of multiplayer Core Keeper. Cool. I don't play very many multiplayer games, honestly.
Yeah.
But for folks that like multiplayer, I liked Core Keeper. I thought it was cute. It had some really neat mechanics. So, I mean, I can give it a try.
Yep. I mean, it gave me Terraria vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Core Keeper is very Terraria, but in a dungeon the whole time,
Yeah. So I mean, I'm probably not going to play it, but it looks interesting. Yeah.
Rematch looked interesting. I wrote down like Rocket League, but actual football.
Yeah. I mean, I put Sifu football because it's a Sifu team, but I mean, it's very much in the line of like EA Big, FIFA Street. All of those kind of like arcade but sports games. I think it could do very well. Once again, it does come down to how well it plays. The animation looked a little robotic, maybe the term I'd use, or whatever. That might be to its favor for latency reasons. So we'll just find out whether it plays well. Because if it's got that animation style but it doesn't play well, then that's a bad combination. You either want it to look absolutely like amazing, but maybe slightly slower from a latency point of view, or you want it to be super like Twitch. So yeah, if they get that right, it could be amazing. But it's a difficult thing to get right.
Yeah. Solasta 2, I kind of like meh,
Yeah, I mean, if you're into that kind of game, you're into that kind of game.
Yeah.
But you're probably already played like Baldur's Gate and all the rest of it. So
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we got to The Witcher 4.
Witcher 4. Yeah. So I mean, Ciri,
Yeah.
and like, I mean, who knows when this game is going to come out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I put on mine like, they did not put a date.
No. The production values are absolutely through the roof on these. I mean, like this and GTA 6, like in a sense, this is what's killing the games industry because the budgets get so big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think GTA 6, for folks that don't know, is in billion with a B.
Yeah,
including like everything.
The rumor is it's like $1 to $2 billion dev cost, let alone anything else. Well, I mean, it kind of doesn't matter. You're in a realm where either everyone buys it or
And luckily everybody will.
Well, and that's why The Witcher will probably do okay, but it's definitely one of those games which is like it's going to be so kind of. I mean, that's probably why they're showing it on an unannounced NVIDIA card. That is Unreal 5, showing off a bunch of Unreal 5's features.
It looked great.
It looks amazing, yeah.
I should have known it was Witcher when like one of the first things you see is a naked woman in the trailer. Because I was like, oh, Witcher.
It's either that or Game of Thrones, so we'll talk about that later.
But I was excited to see that you could play as Ciri. Because I think that is very, very cool. I'm a big fan of the Witcher games. I have qualms about them because the way the Witcher series treats women is abominable. Like, women are always just like either whores for Geralt to have sex with, even if they are some of the main characters. Tress Marigold, I love you, and or they just get killed. And fodder and they usually get killed scantily clad. But I'm excited to play Ciri. I do think they're beautiful games. I do like the world. I like the lore. And I will be playing it. I will definitely be taking some days off when it comes out.
There's something about The Witcher which kind of is more exaggerating The Witcher than it is in GTA 6, but there's something about the deliberate grotesqueness.
Yeah.
And it's not just, nudity and those things. There's some choices there about moral grotesqueness and those things, which I think, does feed that part of humans which kind of like grotesque stuff, really. And that's why they're super, super popular.
Well, when I was watching the trailer and like Ciri sends the sacrificial woman back to the thing when she killed the hag and was going back, I was like, she's going to be dead anyway. And then she was. And I was like, oh, they killed that woman anyway. And I was like, yep, because it's CD Projekt Red. but I will be playing
on brand. That's all you can say, on brand.
Very on brand. But I was excited about it.
Yeah.
I was just like, holy shit, Witcher 4.
Yeah, I think if it comes out in any time soon, I mean, it's just going to be... It's one of those things where the production values are so high, it's just going to be hard to compete with those kind of games, and it'll probably be in a state where like it'll be another 10 years before you get a Witcher 5. You know, like it's just one of those things.
Well, then right after that was another banger with Elden Ring Night Rain.
Yeah, interesting spin-off game.
Yeah.
So not really DLC. Sounds like it's got a big co-op focus. Allegedly, they saw a bunch of people modding the game to give like people being able to play Elden Ring through co-op, and were like, oh yeah, we should probably...
It makes sense.
Do something with that, and then we can, it's kind of a sequel, but it kind of isn't, and we can do all this stuff.
My hairdresser is an Elden Ring fanboy, and it's kind of all he plays. And he has been through it 7 or 8 times, and then he took days off when the DLC came out. And so I was thinking about him when I was watching the trailer. I was just like, this dude is going to be elated. And there are people that all they do is play Elden Ring.
Yeah, and it's interesting because coming right off the back of The Witcher 4, like Elden Ring looks so muddy.
Yeah.
Like it's like the art style is very... like, I don't know, it doesn't have the kind of contrast, doesn't have the lighting that The Witcher has, right? Which feels very cinematic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all FromSoft games are just so dark. And I'm not even just talking just dark in the content. It's just dark.
Yeah, but what I mean is like from an art style point of view, it kind of reminds me a lot of the original like Gears of War type vibe. It's kind of a little bit grey and a bit kind of like
busy,
muddy, busy. And so it comes across very gamey. And to some extent, I think that's kind of what people like about it. And it's why that they can put out games on a more regular, like DLC in games, more than The Witcher or GTA.
Have you ever read or watched Berserk, an anime?
No.
So it's manga by Kentaro Miura. And FromSoft games remind me very much of Berserk because every panel is just so busy with stuff. And it's all very cool, and it's definitely like an art style, but there are some times when you're in a battle or you're like watching a battle or like reading a battle in the manga, it's just like, I don't know what's happening.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's as bad as Warframe when it comes to how busy the screen is, but it's definitely true that like it's almost like a Nintendo approach, which is let's not go to ultimate fidelity. We'll do enough to make it look good, but we're not going to go crazy because we're about making the gameplay more than we're about making it beautiful, and we'll just kind of get the games out and people really respond to it. And I think what you're seeing between The Witcher 4 and Elden Ring are two very different strategies, even within the AAA space, of how you go find your audience. And it looks like Elden Ring are winning in the sense that, you know, they've had great sales, but also they're putting product out. And I do think that that's actually one of the challenges with The Witcher 4 is as much as it's kind of the fantasy GTA, over time, you know, that doesn't necessarily help them.
Well, also CD Projekt Red had a lot of layoffs, right? Like, didn't they get rid of...
they've had to, like a lot of teams, they've had too many products and they were trying to do too much. It doesn't mean to say that which team won't be 1,000 people.
Right.
It will be. I mean,
it looks like it will be. Well, the next is there was a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth PC port trailer. Cool. Great. And then
Catley.
So Catley, I was talking to some friends about Catley today because it looks very cute. And I was like, Apparently, though, the company will not say whether or not they're using AI generated like animals and things. And so folks are like, just let us know. But I did get some cute aggression while watching the trailer. It did look adorable.
I don't really know what the game is. That's the only...
I don't either. It was just like cats. Do you take care of cats? What do you do? Are you a cat? I don't know.
You like cats? Here's a game called Catley.
And the answer is yes. Yes, I do like Catley. There's an untitled game, which is interesting. There was a couple of like, this is an untitled thing, but
Fumito Ueda.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It doesn't have a name yet. When will it be out? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, he made Ico or Eco, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and Shadow of the Colossus and those things. It's guaranteed to be depressing. I mean, like that's just the guarantee that you're going to get.
100%.
Yeah, and if you match that with a depressing Radiohead song, you really are.
I had to stop playing The Guardian. Is the Last Guardian?
Yeah, the Last Guardian.
I had to stop playing it because I get really like invested in like the animal characters in these games, and oh my god, yeah, I had to stop playing it. But I probably won't play that game.
But like a mecha where you get into the head and then the head rips itself, the spinal cord and itself out of its mecha body, and like, I mean, God knows, it looks like a techno Shadow of the Colossus a little bit.
What are because especially because he's climbing up that, or they climbing up that thing. What is the thought behind having a teaser for a game that doesn't even have a name yet? Like, why even do that? I feel it's almost like jinxing it.
From whose perspective?
From the
because the award show they want.
Well, of course the award show wants it, but like the publisher.
It's usually because they feel like that there's often two reasons for it. One is, if you want to hire a bunch of people, having your game out there makes it a little easier to be like, and you get to work on this thing, and you're like, cool, go, and people apply to jobs and those things, so that can be a motivation. I think the other thing is that like hype trains can go long. It depends on your strategy, so you build up over time. But in this modern era where games take 5 years, 10 years to make, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Out of the entire list of games, like I think we'll talk about the awards later, but this one is, I mean, essentially vaporware. So I mean, it's not this. It won't come out, but it's just
It's a very cool concept.
Yeah. And I don't really fully understand what the concept is either.
No, me either. But it's Shadow of the Colossus was amazing, and I will probably not be playing it because it will rip my heart out.
Yeah.
All right. Civ 7. That was the music piece. It was cool. I love it anytime I can see orchestras play video game music.
I also think like things like Civ 7, like any of the real-time strategy games, a little hard to watch like as an entertainment. I mean, I know that people see esports but that's a different. You're seeing the esport part of it, not the actual just visuals of a real-time strategy game. So I get doing a piece of music is a good way of kind of.
That was smart because Civ is really involved and like complicated, I think, and it'd be hard way to be like, here's an entertaining trailer for Civ. Yeah. Good on you, Sid Meier. Let's talk about the Outer Worlds 2. That's the next one. I was so excited about the Outer Worlds 2. I thought the announcement was hilarious. It was whimsical. It was funny. I love Obsidian. I will play anything Obsidian does. I do not care. I love them very, very much. And I was hoping that there would be other kind of whimsical, kind of tongue-in-cheek trailers like that. And there weren't. It was very serious.
It Borderlands. Borderlands.
I was going to talk about that because when we talk about Borderlands, because I was like, why is this this Borderlands trailer is boring, even though it's a huge, like, we'll talk about it. I was like, where's the whimsy, Borderlands, other than the cringe of the what's-his-face from Gearbox getting up there with a big 4 on the back of his jacket. Anyways, but yeah, Outer Worlds I'm very excited about. We played the first Outer Worlds, and it was great. It was really, it gave me the most Fallout New Vegas vibes of any game, and I've been chasing that New Vegas high ever since I played Fallout New Vegas. So it's kind of the spiritual successor to that, and if this is anything like the first one. And I love how they were like, they made some sort of joke about using the same assets and things like that, and I was like, yes, exactly.
Taking 3 times as long with any top of the content.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I love Obsidian. That would be one of my dream places to work for, honestly, because I think that our humors match a lot.
Yeah, I put Guardians of the Galaxy vibes. And I think that tonally, they're very good. I think the only thing I would say with the Outer Worlds 2 is it is actually one of the most entertaining kind of trailer type things. It is one of those things though, like, once again, the actual success of the game is going to come down to whether it succeeds in that vibe and is actually fun. So
did you play Outer Worlds?
I've only played a little bit of it. There's a whole bunch of games that I'm gradually getting around to, and that's actually.
I do think that's very much the tone of Outer Worlds. So I wish it all the best. We'll be playing it.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's actually coming out, but I will be playing.
Yeah, and then we move on to Split Fiction, which seems to be every game known to man piled into a game. They were saying every level is a new game. Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's Mario. It's Super Mario Odyssey with real people.
Yeah, the thing is that, like, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, well, once again, it feels like too unfocused and too many games. Yeah. That's my feel, but I may be wrong. Like, I'll probably eat my words when the game comes out, but I don't know. It definitely feels a little overwhelming. I think even if they pitched it as being less than the actual final game was, the game surprised you with how much variety was in there. I think so like going back to Indiana Jones for a second, that's the thing that surprised everyone, is that it actually is much more rich and interesting a game than people thought it was. Yeah. It feels like if you promise a game to be overly varied, you're setting yourself up for a hard way of succeeding as a result of that. But I mean,
because then you can't pull it back at all,
right?
Because people will be like, "But you told me that I could do 15 million things."
There's a brilliant trailer for the Stanley Parable Deluxe Edition.
Yeah, I love Stanley Parable.
Where it's the Raphael trailer, where somebody from Raphael writes in and says, "I heard in this game you can do everything." and so the narrator is there going, and in this game you can literally do everything. And they're just showing a static picture of a bicycle that's fallen over. And he's talking about how much everything you can do in this game. And it's so beautifully like, parody of that whole kind of thing that I can't look at any of those things in good faith anymore, because it's just,
I'm trying not to hold
reminds
it
me of that
against
trailer.
Haze Light, because I'm sure the company is very cool, but was it Joseph Fares? He seems fucking insufferable.
I can't tell if that's a stage presence thing or whether that's just like him.
I don't know, but they cut to him in the audience a couple of times, and even just cutting to him, and he started like pumping his arms and everything, and I was just like, who is this dude? And then he came out, I'm like, oh, okay.
He's been on the awards many times before.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think those Hazelight have definitely earned a lot of respect for the games they've made.
I mean, It Takes Two was very cool.
It just comes down to, are they going to try and push too far with this game? We'll see.
Yeah. We couldn't play It Takes Two because of the elephant. If you know, you know. All right, Steel Hunters. Yeah, cool. I put Titanfall with
I put
animals.
Transformers. I mean,
cool.
Once again, like it's not going to cut through because of the IP.
Mm-hmm.
It'll cut through if it's just like plays better than anything else you've ever played. But if not, then it will probably,
Long Dark 2, Black Frost. I don't really have much to say about it. I thought the art style was very pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you're into survival games,
yeah.
It's going to be appealing. There's so many survival games out there.
Yeah.
But if you're Canadian and you like the cold, then
and I mean, what do you expect from a place called Hinterland Studio?
Exactly.
But I really did like the art style, like especially the faces on people. I just thought that was very cool.
I was thinking the only way it could be more Canadian is if they were riding moose rather than horses, but
maybe that's like when you get into the game. Yeah. All right, Borderlands 4.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like a big announcement. And I know that sounds a little kind of weird, but you look at it and it almost felt like the trailer had two different art styles to it too. Like some of it was more photoreal and some of it was more cartoony. The cell shaded,
yeah.
And I couldn't tell whether like what they were trying to do with it. But so it was a little bit confusing from that point of view. But it's also just like, yeah, more Borderlands.
Yep.
Cool.
I thought it was going to be at least funny, because Borderlands is a really like cheeky sort of.
The first game is less so, right? Like I think
they're maybe getting back to their roots. Maybe,
who knows? I do think this is one of those games that probably has been quite long in the tooth. So they're going out there going, hey, more Borderlands.
Also, didn't the movie do terribly?
It did. That didn't help.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. The hype around the IP is not high, but I think that's kind of irrelevant. If they came out with the game and go, look, here's like why you should get excited about this game, then I think people would. I just don't have that right now.
Same.
Yeah.
I was excited about watching the Borderlands trailer, and then I was like, okay.
If you like Borderlands, it's more Borderlands.
Yeah, but I mean, I do like Borderlands. I can't play first-person shooters, but I do like watching them. But I was just like, all right, neat. I was more excited about some of the like the indie games that looked interesting and new. What's next? Oh, there's a Tekken 8 DLC. Yay, it's Clive. Cool.
Great. And then we got two very interesting products.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Virtua Fighter is like a bunch of the Virtua brand. So you had Virtua Tennis, I think, Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter. Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter were definitely contemporary and were like the first ones. And they were the first like properly 3D like racing games, driving games. Like they were arcade games that were like pushing 3D to begin with. And having a really good Virtua Fighter could be absolutely awesome. And the team who have been doing Yakuza and all those, like let them loose on a pure fighting game seems like a good bet.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it that makes it stand out yet. Like the trailer didn't really kind of go into what it was, other than saying, "Hey, we got Virtua Fighter." But I wouldn't put it past that team to do something really cool with it. That brand has got a long history. So I hope that they can do something that's worthy of kind of reviving that brand.
And then Project Century.
I think this is possibly the most interesting out of the stuff that we were shown this year.
Oh,
I
why?
Because I think there's something about you got a team that already knows how to build interesting open worlds, and then you're kind of doing a period piece. They've deliberately chosen the palette, the art style to be kind of period, kind of, it's not Technicolor. What's the precursor Technicolor? It's like it's got they've actually done the kind of work to make the palette look like old film, and it's very early. There, I don't think Project Century necessarily is the actual title. I mean, it might be.
Yeah,
but
when it came up Project Century, I was like, oh, it doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
And then the guy said Project Century as the name, and I was like, oh, maybe.
Well,
that's
yeah,
the
it's hard to tell.
name?
Maybe they'll keep it. Maybe they
Maybe.
won't. But I do think that the Yakuza team are just wildly innovative. They do break paradigms in a bunch of ways, and I think that anytime they go into a slightly new space, you're always kind of looking forward to what they do.
They are really good at balancing batshit insane with serious.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity for pathos and those things, I think it's that mix of modern and old. I'm excited. I wrote down in my notes Yakuza Origins. But,
it's interesting that really resonated with you, because it didn't really with me. I was just like, okay, this looks neat.
That's because I'm not reviewing what they showed. I'm reviewing the idea that team what their lens on that process would be like.
I do love the Yakuza games, so yeah, whenever it comes out, cross my fingers.
Yeah, it's the most intriguing. I mean, I don't know if it's going to necessarily be good, but it's got a good chance.
Okay, the next one I was really excited about, and so it's Turok Origins, and this was before my partner went to bed last night, and it came on, and he was like, Turok, and I was like, no, not. And then you see like the guy's face, and it's just like, oh no, that's Turok. Oh shit. So I'm excited about this because I played Turok a million years ago. And I think it's very cool to see an updated telling of that. But whenever it's like dinosaurs against people, I'm kind of always for the dinosaurs.
I think the challenge with this is it's third person. Turok was like one of the early definitive first person shooters. So there's a question of like, okay, you want dinosaurs in your game, so you're labeling it Turok, but what through line it has from the Turok IP is super not clear.
Yeah, other than just dinosaurs. We'll
and
see.
Also, like first person shooters versus third person, it's not like the third person shooters are any less cluttered than first person shooters are. And actually, having played Indiana Jones, which is kind of a mixture of third person and first person, it's an interesting choice here. Once again, I don't really know what the hook is. Dinosaurs have been done quite a lot now.
Yeah.
So
we should know.
Yeah. So, nothing in the trailer said this is why this is interesting. The fact that most people who saw don't know that Turok was even a game before. And we'll talk about some other games later that most people won't know were like games before.
Do you think maybe they're trying to just run on nostalgia and be like, the folks that played Turok will want to play this because you haven't seen this IP in 25 years?
I think the market is so tough right now. I don't see anyone going, I'm buying it on the basis of a name. I just don't see that as being a real, you're not going to get many sales that way. I think I think they did it because it's easy. Like if you've got a game with dinosaurs and you go, okay, like Turok matches and we can get the license, cool. But I don't think it will give them a leg up as much as maybe they'd want it to.
That sucks. But I perked up.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't do nothing, but
I'm also of a certain age.
But it's also true that it's not Turok in the sense of like it's a third person game. You know what I mean? Like It's got enough differences that they're going to have to work quite hard to either earn the brand or just completely redefine it. which means it didn't mean much in the first place.
Good point. The next one is the Helldivers DLC. Cool. I was very excited because the actual presentation for this was really good. They had like Super Earth. They had a Helldiver come out and wearing the helmet and everything. And
I wanted them to do the thing where like they come out
a
the
thing
ground
down. Yeah, that would be really cool. But I was like, more of this. I thought that was a great presentation, and they just did. I mean, Helldivers 2 has had a colossal year.
Mhm.
Like, good for them too, because it's a great game. It's super fun. I can't do shooters like that, but I loved watching other people. I used to watch you play it when you were playing it at the office, and it's super tongue in cheek. Starship Troopers, fascist, anti-fascism, basically.
It's a combination of very hardcore and also like funny. Like, which is it's a nice kind of combination. But I mean, everyone kind of knew this was coming because what Helldivers 2 have done, which is very successful, is actually what GTA 3 did, which is that Helldivers 1 was a simpler game. It was isometric. They had all this stuff. And Helldivers 2 is in a more accessible format, i.e. it's third-person action shooter, multiplayer action shooter, but all the systems are basically from the first game. So the fact that this clan is coming, people kind of knew that, and they know what to expect, and there's a bunch of like expectations around that. But it means that they kind of already know it works.
Yeah.
So then it's about really kind of honing it. So it's that big thing of like it being a sequel means you can kind of take a bunch of stuff that works and really take it to another level. And then the change of perspective means you can bring it something that feels very fresh at the same time. And I think that that's the thing for me, which is like Arrowhead have really nailed. And it's what happened to GTA 3. So after GTA 1 and 2, which were top-down 2D, GTA 3 is just GTA, but it's in 3D, and suddenly it becomes this kind of touch point. So they don't get to do that again, unfortunately. You can pull that card once.
Yeah.
But they have to great success. So now it's about how you deliver beyond that.
I'm glad to see that there's DLC coming out already, because they're just like ride the wave.
There was some talk about it being cut from the original, in the sense of that game has actually been in development for like 7 or 8 years before it got launched, and I think they cut it down just to get it out the door.
What's that like, having to cut things?
So, but they already knew what they wanted, so that's why they. But actually, in some senses, for a live game, that makes sense as well. Like ship, and then you'll kind of set up to roll content. If they shipped actually a fuller game, then it would have been harder for them to add DLC. So it's complicated, but
I just really liked the presentation. Yeah. I was appreciative of like, oh, something video game-ish at the Video Game Awards. That's rad. More of that, please.
Yeah.
Then we have Warframe.
Warframe 1999.
1999.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of stealth release as far as I can tell. I mean, Warframe has done great guns. They were a very early mover into free to play on console. Because
that's basically, it was like, and it's available right now. Yeah. Or like at midnight tonight or something like that.
Yeah, there was a fun joke with, I think it was Slay the Spire, where they were like 2025 and they scrubbed out the 5. And then they put the 5 back and said still, and it was just like, yeah, we're not gonna early release it. But no, I think hey, look, Warframe's great. I think it's got a big audience. I think people are going to play it. What can you say?
Yeah, and then there's Pal World Faybreak DLC. I don't really play Pal World. It's not really my jam, but hooray!
Yeah, if anyone was thinking like, they're gonna try and kind of separate themselves from things looking Pokemon-ish, I don't think that trailer did very much to.
No, I think they even had some of the pals, I guess you call them, in the trailer that they are getting sued for. So, cool. You do you, Pocket Pair, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look.
Yeah, cool.
Double down.
Double down. Onimusha, which I'm actually quite excited about.
Yeah. I've heard various people say Onimusha and Onimusha. So
Onimusha?
I think it's Onimusha, but Onimusha. I don't know. Like
Onimusha.
Onimusha. It looks fun. I think this is a brand that's kind of in the middle for me, in the sense of like, I think there'll be a bunch of people who look back fondly on that brand and be like, cool, right? There'll be a bunch of people who have no idea what it is, and we'll move on. But I think there's enough nostalgia for it to kind of break through a little bit, and obviously there's some mechanics in there which are going to be fun. So yeah, looks interesting. We'll see. It
was a beautiful trailer.
Yeah, Capcom definitely seemed to be like, if you compare Capcom to where Konami are, like Capcom are killing it. Sega are killing it as well. To be fair, like Sega and Capcom have really come back in a way. Sega likewise, like they went through some hard times, and Sega seemed to be getting more and more confident.
Yeah, Sega had a great trailer last year. I don't think it was at the Game Awards. I forgot where it was. I just remember watching it like in the office with folks, just talking about like bringing back the fun, nostalgic games that they made in the 90s, and they're redoing some of those and then have some new things. And we were just like, oh, all right, Sega.
Yeah.
Come on.
We're
ready.
It's a really good case for a company knowing who they are, right? And really kind of having confidence in their own personality to like make games that are Sega games.
Give me a Crazy Taxi.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of Sega things that really kind of come through, and I'm a huge fan of both Capcom and Sega, and I was really sad when Sega kind of, I know, it felt like they'd kind of lost a lot of confidence and kind of been gutted. And it's a similar thing to what's happened to Konami, but Konami haven't come back yet. Capcom feel like they're doing good guns, and Sega feel like, and like when you get the big Japanese publishers really beginning to kind of push, and the American I just think it's a richer, more interesting ecosystem, and I'm glad for Sega to be back on track. So going back to Onimusha, like Capcom killing it, I think I don't think anyone would bet against them at this point.
Speaking of Konami, if only they had some sort of cheat code to get back into AAA space. All right, next one. Oh, okay. First Berserker Kazan.
Yeah, so these next two games are allegedly in the same universe.
It's just the main thing that I wrote down was very high ponytail. just like, wow, who does his hair? But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it got introduced by who the Avengers directors. I can't remember their name now. Whatever brothers.
The Avengers?
No, like the writers and directors of the Avengers movies.
Oh,
Anyway.
Yeah, those Mr. Avengers.
Mr. Avengers. They introduced this first Berserker Kazan thing, which is part of the Dungeon and Fighter universe, I think, which is also the same universe the next thing was in.
Yeah, because for what is it?
At least as far as maybe I misunderstood, but like if it's real tonal whiplash between the two.
Yeah, because I mean, the second one, all I wrote down was like waifu on a flying boat. Because it's one of those games.
So the first Berserker Kazan, it was all CG.
Yeah.
Nothing to see. Like out of all the games, which felt like a kind of a nothing, that definitely was high up on my list of like, we're just being shown a CG thing. I don't really understand what it's doing.
We'll see what happens.
And funnily enough, like the Ara Dungeon Fighter, which you called waifu on a flying boat, definitely felt more of a game than the other one did. So,
yeah,
take your pick.
I liked how I thought that the first Berserker Kazan looked kind of badass, like even with the high ponytail, or especially because of the high ponytail. But like you said, yeah, it's all CG. Like, what will the actual game look like? Who knows?
Yeah, and I don't know what the relationship between that is, and
I don't know if it's the same universe. I mean, I think I did hear Jeff say though another one from the Dungeon and Fighter universe, right?
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard to tell whether he's talking about the next thing or the previous thing. So I might have got that wrong. But yeah. So we shall see. We shall see. It was a bit confusing.
Yeah. So we've got Dying Light, the Beast, which I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it felt rural Dying Light
Mm-hmm.
rather than urban Dying Light, which may or may not increase or decrease the opportunities for parkour. Looks fun.
Yeah.
If you're into Dying Light, I'm sure, you'll buy it.
Yeah.
And then the next one is Strange.
Yeah. All I really wrote down was, why is Post Malone here?
Apparently he has a murder circus.
Apparently he does.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So Post Malone is being the like face of the trailer and everything. And then it's like, oh no, he's in the game. Post Malone is in the game. So
Well, you
this
wouldn't
is
hire him unless you put him in the game, right?
I thought maybe he was just gonna be like part of the commercial, but it's like no, this is Post Malone's murder circus. I was like, okay, why are you here? But who knows? Maybe I don't know anything about it. It might be fun. Some Post Malone fans, posties, as I'm calling them. I don't know if that's what they're called.
I mean, I've not played much of the Hunt Showdown anyway, so
yeah, me either. What kind of game is it?
It's an asymmetric multiplayer game.
Okay. Cool. So kind of like Dead by Daylight, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's its own thing.
Okay. Cool. What's the next one?
Squid Game Unleashed.
Oh, Squid Game. So do I have this correct that this is on Netflix? Like it's a game that you can play through Netflix, or this is a game that is just published by Netflix?
It's a game that's published by Netflix.
Okay. So I was confused because the way they were presenting it, it was like, oh, and this is one of the first Netflix playable whatever. And I was like, are you going to be able to play through Netflix? Because now YouTube is doing these like YouTube playable sort of things.
I mean, they may find a way to have that as a mechanism.
I mean, they gamified
but as far as I understand
Black
it, all of the sure. But I mean, like as far as I understand it, all the Netflix games are going to be essentially mobile phone downloads that are with the Netflix account unlock. There may be other platforms as well, but
gotcha.
the big thing I took away from this is tonally it looked very odd because the Squid Game is like essentially a horror show.
Yeah, it's super serious.
And the game looks like it's a knockout kind of,
Yeah, the game looks like Mr. Beast doing Squid Game.
Yeah, it looks more kiddie than I would expect. It's like I don't know if they know who their audience is from an art style point of view.
Because didn't they then have like a small trailer for the season 2 of Squid Game? And it's like, okay, now people are actually being murdered.
Yeah, tonally it seems bizarre, but
at least they had a bunch of like those enforcer folks on the stage. I was a fan of that, even though I'm not really.
But
I don't really care about Squid Game.
That's like the thing of like going to a cartoony style. That's odd.
Choices were made.
Stage fright.
Yeah, what is that's the Overcooked. I mean, I thought this looked kind of cute. I liked that they had the kind of interactive sort of trailer. And I really liked that one of the characters was like, this never would have happened at E3. It's like, okay, that's funny. That got me. Overcooked was funny.
Yeah, the other thing that I thought was interesting here is I think the publisher is Hello Games, which I don't know. I don't think Ghost Town Games have published with Hello Games before. I know Hello Games published Last Campfire, but they're kind of getting into this kind of small press publishing, which is cool and interesting. Hey, look, I think this scratches the itch for a It Takes Two kind of audience, maybe better than the Hazelight one. So look fun.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. The next one, the Game of Thrones King's Road, which I found out today, this is a mobile game. I didn't realize that it was a mobile game.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. I mean, I think it kind of doesn't matter in the sense that one of the challenges you've got is how are you standing out relative to everything else? And you go, well, we've got Game of Thrones. And you're like, well, all right,
cool.
If The Witcher we mentioned earlier is like, nudity and profundity and all those things to kind of try and move the emotional needle, and Game of Thrones the TV show was like that. I don't know what leaves for this game.
Yeah, it was odd to me because it looks like it's set in the time of the original Game of Thrones
Mhm.
series because you got Jon there, you've got
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Cersei.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cersei, like Jon's still on the wall.
Mhm.
Cersei is in charge of King's Landing. So I'm like, okay, where is this supposed to be set? Because it seems like the show or the network has moved on
Mhm.
from that. And so this is kind of like pulling you back. And I feel like it's gonna make people just get kind of bitter because the show ended so terribly. They're like, I don't
I
want to play
actually don't
this.
think that's its biggest problem.
What's the biggest problem?
I think the biggest problem is I don't see anything about the game that makes me go, that's something I want to play. Like, imagine it wasn't Game of the Thrones. Let's just imagine it was another brand.
Yeah.
There's nothing there that makes me go, oh, okay, cool. Like, this is your take on
It just looks like
that
a
gameplay.
medieval adventure game, right?
Right. And so the Game of Thrones is literally the only thing that makes it stand out. And if that's the only thing that makes you stand out, that's not going to do the thing you want. Like I mentioned earlier, like having IP doesn't necessarily, like the Turok thing I mentioned earlier, having IP doesn't necessarily help you. You still have to be a great game that earn your right as like why people should play you, and then the IP can help. But if you look at something like Spider-Man, is great not just because Spider-Man is a good IP, but because the game executes against that. It's why indie is good. Like there are lots of bad indie games out there, but this one's good because it synergizes well. I just see nothing here that makes me go, oh, okay, that's your hook that's going to make this worthwhile. And that's the biggest warning sign, because if you're just relying on name recognition, as you say, then you're vulnerable to people going, well, I didn't really like the TV show at the end, so I'm not going to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched the television show, hated the 7th and 8th seasons. But I don't.
It's the trick that
I don't
Star
want
Wars
to watch.
pulls.
I mean, I don't want to play the game.
It's like, when the prequels came out, everyone hated the prequels. And then Clone War, like Star Wars did a lot of work to rehabilitate like some of those storylines. A cleverly built game could do that for Game of Thrones. It's just not, it just doesn't appear to be this.
Yeah, especially if it's mobile. I saw that today and I was like, is it? Wild. Double Dragon Revive, which we don't know if was just a commercial or an actual trailer.
I mean, I remember Double Dragon back,
Yeah, me too.
I'm of the era of going to the arcades and playing Double Dragon. Once again, nothing here is telling me why anyone should care about this IP. There's been a few of these games where you're like, yeah, you just have to be a good game.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Screamer.
Yeah.
So I thought about you when I saw the thing for Screamer, actually. It was like, I want to know what Hamish has to say about this.
Yeah, I mean, so Milestone, who the developer are, a very, very good developer based in Italy. They are motorbike specialists. They've been doing the ride games, the MotoGP games. Clearly have got the capability of doing a really great racing game. This isn't just a straight racing game. It's they're saying we've got Troy Baker and we've got like this, story and those things, which sounds exciting. The thing I think the challenge they're going to have is to go wilder than they think they should to some extent. Like, I mean, they're Italian, so they can definitely go wild, but like, that's the danger with this, is that they're so used to the sim end of things. This should be a refreshing break from that and be like, we just kind of go do all the things we couldn't do being a sim.
I guess from the trailer, I didn't really get a sense of what the game was.
Yeah.
Other than just really, really cool cars, looked like some cell shading, like
cool
anime car game.
But I think in terms of game structure, like if it's just races, and then there's nothing else, then I think it doesn't matter how good the story is. People aren't going to necessarily play those kind of things through. So, if I was advising them, I'd be like, okay, what are the things that are really going to be surprising that kind of take you to another level? Because for them, I'm pretty sure they'll be excited just to work on something that isn't necessarily a sim.
Yeah.
But you kind of need a little bit more than that.
Is Screamer new IP?
Yes and no. So no, in the sense that there are a bunch of Screamer games. It is old. It is an old IP.
Oh, gotcha.
But they might have just bought the name.
Okay.
Because from the treatment of what they're doing, it's nothing like what the old games were. So they might have just got the trademark and go, well, we're making our own game. And I'd much prefer that, to be honest, because they're definitely not working on game recognition. Like, no one's going, hey, I played all these old Screamer games and therefore this is going to be great. I would look at Milestone, though, and go, they're a great developer. And, if anyone can do a great driving game, they can do a great driving game. The question then is, how do you make sure that is more than just a racing game and it steps out into that wider world? That's where their challenges are going to come in. But hey, good luck to them. Like, I think it's exciting.
It looked rad. Like, those cars looked rad as hell.
Literally, like, if you look at the types of games that got shown, it's so nice to see something that isn't just a fantasy RPG or, like, I really want us to kind of diversify as much as possible. Having a great driving game is exciting. Let's go. Let's go. Like, I'm in.
Let's fucking go.
But yeah, I think that their challenge is going to be, how do you keep it fresh and interesting? Story is great, but how does the story have meaning into the actual gameplay? Like, lots of RPGs, they've solved this problem of how you build story and gameplay together. Racing games haven't had a great history of bringing story and gameplay together, so that's going to be the challenge.
Cool. Yeah, good luck to them. We'll see when it comes out. Last of Us 2 is getting a PC port. Cool. The only thing I want to say about Last of Us 2 PC port is that I bet there are folks at Naughty Dog, if they've been there for a long time, that may have only worked on Last of Us games for the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, are they tired? Like, so tired of the Last of Us universe. That's why I'm like, we'll talk about Intergalactic when we get to the end. But
yeah, the answer is, though, that, like, if you make these things, often because you are making them over such a long period of time, you can't, to some extent, you never were a fan, in the sense of, like, you've been building this thing, you keep on building the thing, and the thing you enjoy is building.
Yeah. So
it doesn't have to be necessarily that, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to necessarily be that they're so into it from a gamer perspective. They can just be into it from a what they have to do each day kind of perspective. And if having worked behind the scenes in a lot of situations, like, there's a guy I know who used to work on the original, like, Star Wars movies, and for him, they're just a fun fantasy series that has no cultural relevance or resonance. Because it's a sci-fi show he worked on.
Thing that he made.
Yeah, and he's kind of bored of talking about it. Whereas everyone else is like, Star Wars. So, like, I think for a bunch of people, it'll still be a fun job. But it's definitely true that I'm sure they'll be happy to move on to something new. Yeah.
What do you think of Den of Wolves? That's the next trailer.
Yeah. Den of Wolves. Interesting.
I'm trying to remember this one. Remember this trailer.
So it's kind of Left 4 Dead-y, heist, cyberpunky type thing. Made by some of the people who originally worked on Payday.
Oh, right. Okay. I do remember this trailer now. Because there are more masks. There's always going to be masks for the folks that made Payday.
Yeah, and then, like, if you go to the website, they've got an AR game of, like, it's... I wouldn't say it's obnoxious, because that's too harsh, but it's definitely like, I just wanted to find out about the game, and there's this whole AR game going on in the website, and I'm like, okay, I get the world building, but it's one of those games you kind of go, either this will hit a audience or it won't. I think it's got a good chance. Like, I don't see anything there that I'm, like, worried about. That team know what they're doing. So
I feel like the name Den of Wolves, though, is so generic that it's like,
Thick as Thieves is also generic from that point of view.
Yeah, I guess. But I'm just like, Den of Wolves, Sea of Thieves, Thick as Thieves. Like, they're all getting kind of jumbled up in my head of, like, which trailer was which.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, they will either stick or they won't, and that's nothing to do with the quality of the name. It's going to be,
Okay, the next one is Zenless Zone Zero. The only thing I wrote about this was big titty waifus who sing.
Yeah, I mean, it's Hoyoverse, so, I mean,
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I mean, it was right before the Honkai Star Rail. We could probably talk about the same one. Honkai Star Rail is apparently one of the most popular
Oh yeah.
games out there. I've never played it.
Yeah, that and obviously Genshin Impact
Yeah.
and like there's the Hoyoverse whole setup is fascinating. They make good game. It's not always to my taste because it's
Yeah.
very mobile focused.
I should have written down for like Honkai Star Rail is like big titty waifus on a subway.
But they're very much like a King or these other mobile games that kind of they really know, like they're very data driven. They know how to push the right buttons to get people to play, and you can either take them or leave them, but they're very successful.
Yeah. All right. Sonic Racing.
I mean, they just showed Sonic getting into a car and driving away.
Yeah, it was very short.
I mean,
but more Sega, go Sega, I suppose.
I mean, Mario Kart, Sonic Racing. I mean, they'll
Cross Worlds.
Yeah,
Sonic Racing Cross Worlds.
They'll churn those things out forever. Hopefully it's good.
Yeah, cool. The next one is Mafia: The Old Country. This I will probably play. I thought it looked very cool. I love like the Mafia games, like those sort of like RPG. You're in a crime-ridden family, but for honor, stuff like that. I love shit like that. And it looked like you're basically playing Godfather 2 when Al Pacino goes back to Italy after he kills what's-his-face with the toilet gun. But I thought it looked really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mafia have got a pretty good, games have got a pretty good history. I did see some people complaining because it's set further back in the past, like the driving and other things is going to be a little less prominent because obviously it's
because it's in the 40s, maybe the 40s.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it's set, but I mean, maybe even earlier than that a little bit.
Maybe.
We'll see. I think it's one of those things that is a contemporary. I want to say contemporary. It's not modern, but you know what I mean. Like it's not fantasy or sci-fi. I just think we don't have enough of those kinds of games. In general, they are expensive to make.
Yeah.
So
because those type of games, they're like rife with side quests, like 1.5 million side quests. Which is one of the reasons I like them. Like you can, of course, like go through the main thing in probably 40 hours or so, but I want to be in the world for 100+. So
that's
looks
what
like
the Yakuza games do very well. Is keep
they
that
do.
Yeah.
Batshit insane side quests. All right, the next one is Infinity Nikki DLC, A Day with Nikki.
Once again, big mobile game.
Yeah, so I don't know. People on Blue Sky talk about Infinity Nikki all the time, and folks that I wouldn't expect to play a game like this because it's basically a game. I don't really know much about it. I tried to get someone to explain to me Infinity Nikki. It looks very cool, but it's basically a game where you do a bunch of mini games and you get things to dress up. And so you can dress up in these really elaborate outfits and take photos and just be like just the most beautiful girl ever. And people are fucking loving this game. It came out just recently, I think. So yeah, like
came out. Yeah, I mean it came out December 5th. So yeah, a week ago. I see like people taking screenshots of their Infinity Nikkis all the time because I thought when I first saw it that it was just a better looking Roblox, what is it? Dress to Impress. Have you heard of Dress to Impress? Mm-hmm. Which is really fun to watch people play. Well, I mean, the other thing
to
note is this is the 5th installment of the Nikki series.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've never heard of these before.
And
it's just not really the type of game.
To Shining Nikki.
Shining Nikki.
Which is such a Japanese title of a game. Like Shining in the Darkness, like Shining Force. Like
Dragon Ball, Sparking Zero, 4792.
But yeah, no, so it's very popular. It's it's a cozy open world game.
Yeah. It's open world. I was like, that's interesting. So cool. Good for you, Infinity Nikki devs. Yeah. I didn't know anything about you until I saw people on Blue Sky going apeshit for this game.
And I think actually that this is actually a place where I think the Game Awards is interesting, right? Because I think whilst it does come in with a bunch of biases, like us being part of the games industry and like not really knowing very much about Infinity Nikki, but being like, oh, okay, it's a thing, and there's a dedicated audience, and they're hitting that audience with the show. Just shows that I think they are being pretty good at being fairly diverse in terms of the types of games that are on the show, and I think that's a good sign.
I saw some cute animals and I was like, that's adorable. Good for you, Infinity Nikki. Let's talk about Dispatch.
Yeah.
Dispatch, I thought I liked that Laura Bailey came out with Aaron Paul, because I love Laura Bailey. And I mean, they had an interesting back and forth, sure. But at least it was like, here's people from the game talking about it. And then it's not just Jeff Keighley being like, here's a new thing we're all excited about. It was like something. I thought the game looked pretty cool. I don't really know what the gameplay is yet. Who knows when it's actually going to come out, but I like how it looked. It's taking like the superhero genre and kind of turning it on its head a bit. It looks like it's not taking itself too seriously, and it looks like something that I would definitely try.
I also like the name of the developer, Ad Hoc Studio.
Ad Hoc Studios, yeah. You're not going to have a devs called Ad Hoc Studios take themselves way too seriously. Like, I love that.
Yeah. It's one to watch out for, maybe.
Yeah, I will definitely play it. Okay, let's talk about the next one, because I thought Jeff was gonna cry.
I mean, he did look close to it, didn't
he really did. And when he looked like he was about to cry, honestly, I had this flash in my head of like, it's not Okami. And then it was. And I was just like, ah! So I played the first Okami. I played through it 4 or 5 different times. And this was long time ago when I didn't do that because I was in school and I was working full time. And so I didn't have time to play games as much as I would ever really want to. But I just kept like just playing the game, and then I would play it again because it's one of the most gorgeous, beautiful games I have ever played in my life. It's fun. It's like brush strokes. The whole thing is gorgeous. So we got to see 2 whole seconds of the wolves of Amaterasu's like body, and that was it. So I'm not going to try to look forward to this game yet because it's not even in production yet.
Yeah, it's not real yet.
Yeah, they said, it has started pre-production. And okay. That's when I was like, fuck, because this is going to be another 8 years.
Not necessarily, but one thing that is true is that like graphics technology has moved on a long way since the original Okami. I think was the original Okami PlayStation 2?
I feel like I played it on the Wii. I don't remember what I played it on. I had a PS2.
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2.
Released in 2006.
Was it on the Wii?
It was on the Switch and the Wii.
Yeah, okay. I might have played it, but I definitely played it on PlayStation 2 as well, because I played it before I moved to New York is when I played this, and I moved to New York in 2007.
And I think it's like one of the first PlayStation 2 games I really remember being like deliberately non-photorealistic and kind of getting its art style to really work.
It
wasn't just
beautiful.
a limitation of the platform. It was like a deliberate decision to kind of go in that direction.
It was so different than anything I had ever played before.
And I think that's I definitely think that art style is a little bit more standardized these days. So I'm curious to see how they take it. But I think that it's a good time for it to come back. And I think there's, Okami isn't so old as to no one ever remember what it is.
Yeah.
2006 is still almost 20
years
ago.
Yeah.
But,
Now I feel old. Because I remember playing this like when it first came out. It was getting all of these like rave reviews, and I was like, okay, let's play this game. And then I was just like, oh, I love video games.
But hey, look, it's on the books, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'm crossing my fingers and toes and all of this stuff that it actually happens in the next 5-6 years. Who knows? If maybe it's at the end of pre-production. I mean, they already have like a little concept teaser. It was 2 seconds. Like they could have gotten a company to do that. But needless to say, I'm very excited about Okami 2. I wonder what they will call it. Crimson Desert is the next one. I don't really know anything about Crimson Desert.
Yeah, so it's the group that made Black Desert Online.
Okay.
So it's kind of like Black Desert, big kind of open world multiplayer type thing. It's I think Korean, right? And I think the people who are into it will be excited. I think our friend Omar will probably be excited for it.
Yeah.
I think it was a good palate cleanser between Okami 2 and then what we should talk
Yeah.
about the end.
Okay, so let's talk about Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. I was so excited this entire trailer. Um, I I think I just wrote down like yes, 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 and more yes. Porsche, like there were so many name drops. There was like Porsche, there was Adidas, Sony. They were playing the Pet Shop Boys. It was really really great. So I'm excited about this game. I remember I haven't been this excited about an actual trailer, like cinematic trailer like that, since Cyberpunk 2077. I remember I was working at a production house in Williamsburg, and we made music videos and like commercials and things like that. And every Monday we would have like a meeting where one of us would bring something cool in the media that we saw that week. And I remember bringing and it was usually some sort of movie trailer because they were all film folks and I was the kind of the lone video game folk, so I was always bringing like video game trailers and things. And I brought this trailer and I was like, this is one of the greatest trailers I've ever seen for a video game. And this was in 2017 or something, so it was long before Cyberpunk actually came out. But I got those vibes from this where I was just like, oh fuck, I need to watch that again right now. And I just kind of loved everything about it. This is my sort of game. I will be playing this game.
I remember back to when Uncharted got first announced, and a lot of people at the time were like, okay, so it's like Tomb Raider, or like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of...
It's boy like, Tomb Raider.
Yeah, it was, and therefore Indiana Jones. Like it was like, it was a little bit like, you know, whatever. And, you know, likewise, Last of Us maybe got a little bit more hype. I don't know about this one.
Really?
And the reason, so here's why. Because given all the things you just said, right? Like the just all the product placement and, you know, getting Trent Reznor to the music and like
Kumail Nanjiani.
Exactly. All of those things make me go, okay, you could come away with the impression like all the boxes are ticked from this thing. I have to see what the gameplay looks like. I'm very much someone who is like, all the trappings don't really matter to me. Like, I think you've heard me today talk about like, okay, they've got a brand, but who cares? Yeah. There's a little bit of me which is like the spaceship design the
Porsche spaceship.
Yeah, it's like, what gameplay does that imply, and how does that kind of, you know, fit together? And then the final couple of shots of them kind of with a blade, like with a kind of
it was weird because it was
thing.
Like you had this whole thing at the beginning and then she's like fighting this huge monster thing and I was like, oh, that's okay, that's different.
So I think this is very much a wait and see from my point of view. This is kind of the other half of Guardians of the Galaxy, right? So Obsidian had the kind of humor of Guardians of the Galaxy, but none of the kind of outward trappings. This is all the outward trappings of Guardians of the Galaxy, but not the humor. Like, you know, it's the kind of throwback to tape and you know, CRT TVs and you know, mini discs and all these things. So I don't know. Once again, for me, and Naughty Dog are a great team.
Yeah, so. Welcome to retrofuturism, Naughty Dog.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think it's going to come down to whether the actual gameplay itself is going to engage me, or whether I get excited about this. And what I've seen is like saying, "Hey, we're working on a thing." Cool.
I was excited to see because it's like femme protagonist. It seems like. I didn't mind all the product placement because honestly, I was like, oh, that means it's our world. That means it's like it's a world where there's Adidas and Sony and all of this stuff. So that I don't know, that kind of excited me.
But it's kind of retrofuturism.
Yeah, it's retrofuturism.
Because it isn't our world. Because like in the future, you wouldn't
alternate reality. Well, exactly. Our world.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of grounded me a bit of like, oh, these are familiar things that are in this world. That's why
Guardians of the Galaxy does their thing too.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's exactly the same reason. And I don't want to put a downer on it. I think it's definitely a space they haven't been yet, and I'm curious to see what they do with it. I just don't think this trailer told me what they're actually doing with it.
I'm just excited, like I was saying before, that there are some Naughty Dog devs that are working on something that's not The Last of Us.
Yeah, or
for the first time
Uncharted.
On Uncharted, for the first time in like 15 years.
Yeah, and hey, look, this isn't my cynicism. Isn't there to be like they're going to do a terrible job. It's more like for me, the announcement doesn't really do anything for me because it's still a placeholder.
It did things for me. I was very excited. It was just like, this is going to be cool if it comes out.
Well, let's move on to that then.
Yeah. All right. So that's all of the trailers. I thought that maybe we would like pick and choose some, but it's like, yeah, we just went through all of the trailers and because we had thoughts about all of them. So let's talk about some of the actual awards that happened. We don't have to go through all of the awards, but we can go through the ones that we cared about, that we liked. I mean, of course, like Astrobot Balatro had very, very good nights.
Yep.
So were there any that you were like really surprised about?
Not really. I mean, I think that by and large, the shortlists were pretty well set up in the sense of, I think, I don't think there's too many controversies about like when you get into those groups of like, I know some people are like, why did Astrobot win Best Game of the Year when it should have been Black Myth or whatever? But like Black Myth was in the nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all pretty much for muchness from that point of view. I don't think there's anything that really like stood out to me as being too kind of out of line or anything like that. I think I think more for me it was more about the structure of, I think we already talked about it, of the show and who got to stand up on stage and how they got to celebrate those things.
I was annoyed, and I think I even texted you about it because Sydney was doing the pre-show, and then there wasn't another woman presenter for almost 2 hours. And I was just like, oh, do women presenters not exist in this world? And that happened like last year too. There were almost no like women presenters, and I was just like, okay, cool, great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, as I said, it's more of the structure of the show problem rather than the actual awards themselves. I think the awards themselves, it's, you've got a bunch of genres there, and you've got a few, it's kind of a slightly weird mix of like best game direction, best art direction, best audio direction, but no best technical direction. Like it's not that kind of show. Like I get those things. But yeah, so for me, the awards was more about how people got up to celebrate those games and like how long the presenter got before they read out the nominations versus the person at the other end of the person that they're winning.
One thing I was really surprised about, and it wasn't a game award, it was like the Game Changer Award. Yeah. They talked about the layoffs. Yeah,
I actually thought this was a good way of talking about it in the sense
I didn't think they were going to do it.
Well, I think this is the thing is like in an award show, you can talk about anything as long as you celebrate it, right? So like you can't celebrate layoffs, right? Because that doesn't make sense. And then not celebrate, like going off and trying to kind of do a deep dive on some complicated, political issue is also not good for a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the choice they made, which was to have a celebration around somebody who was doing something within the space of what to deal with the layoffs, I think is the right choice in terms of that thing. Now, how parochial that may or may not feel in terms of like, it's US based, blah, 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 doesn't matter. Because once again, it's the subtext that matters rather than the text in some senses. And it's just showing that like we can celebrate people doing the right thing by the industry. To be honest, I do think there would be some value in having best company or best publisher or those things in the sense of like trying to reward good behavior when it comes to those things. But
as someone who was laid off this year, just like yourself, I was just like, oh, they're talking about the layoffs. And I like the thing that Jeff Keighley said of like, he was very honest with it. We weren't exactly sure how to address this because it's a really hard thing. And but we decided to give the Game Changer Award, and then Amir Satvat was and when he was talking about his like why he wanted to do it, I did get a little teary because I was just like, oh,
yeah, and it meant a lot. It meant a lot.
It meant so much to him, and I was just like, oh, I love you.
And that's actually why I think the Game Awards are slightly throwing awards under the bus, in the sense of you could be having more of that.
Yeah.
In the show, partly, picking out slightly better award, types. Like I was saying, like celebrating the things you want to see in the industry. You could go further with that. And having people on stage who genuinely are, it means a lot to them. That's why people watch award shows, not just trailers and adverts and those things. It's because you're seeing people who are being thanked for something, and there's this kind of nice feedback, and that's why I think this weirdly may end up being really good for the Game Awards, because last year they got a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
And I think this year they found a solution. I just kind of wish they'd gone further, which is not have multiple Game Changer Awards, but just realize that award shows about celebration, and how do you maximize that at every step, and not be quite so overtly commercial in terms of just like everything being an advert.
Yeah. And it did sound a little bleak, though, especially even though we were celebrating it, that Amir Safat, he was talking about 35,000 games. Jobs have been lost in the past couple of years, which ours was one of them. And then he said at the end, like, we've been able to place 3,000 game devs, which is great, which is wonderful for those like game devs. But I remember Baird being like, oh, wow, only 3,000 out of 35,000, and he's the one getting the award for this, so he's probably placed more people than anybody else. It's like, wow, that's bleak. It's like, it is.
Yeah, and I think that, but as I said, like that's how you handle bleak topics, is by finding the right place to celebrate.
Yeah.
Every little win helps.
Yeah.
Right?
I started following him. I had never really heard of him. But I started following him, and he wrote this whole thing about how he feels about getting the Game Changer Award, and I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
good for you.
Yeah, and
thank you for caring about us.
And I think that, if anything, is an indication of whether TGAs could go in the future.
Yeah. Well, some folks subversively did things like that. Like Sven Vinke, I think is his name. He presented the Game of the Year. And he talked about he sees a world in 2025 where the game that wins are going to be from a company that puts like their devs over profits and everything like that. And I was just like, hell yeah, dude, good for you. And he's also wearing like a ceasefire pin, which was I was just like, I like this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think award shows are places where you can be subversive in a good way.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's video games. It's not a funeral home.
Right. And I think that, and so I think they did exactly the right thing with the tone. But it slightly disappointed me that they couldn't have actually gone further, which is like structured the show a little bit in a way of like, yeah, just like finding the best way to celebrate the things that are important.
Yeah.
And they do a little bit of it, but it feels very tokenized, like the Games for Impact and those things. It's like, that's cool, but
yeah, they didn't really talk about it very much. It was just like, here's a trailer, and then you go to the next.
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
you actually don't know what Never is about.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't heard of it, you might be like, okay, I'll check it out, but there's no hook kind of passed on about why you should care.
Yeah.
So there's a few things there that I would definitely like. Once again, in the loving thing of improving the show, that emotional connection is engaging if you get it right. And I think they skipped over things that they could have had more emotional engagement over.
When it comes to the actual awards, like, so huge night for Balatro.
Yeah.
Good for Local Thunk. I didn't realize it was just one person.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that Local Thunk was...
And he just made games for his friends, basically.
Good. Wow. And he didn't even want to be there either. He was just like, no.
No, I mean
You go ahead.
he's definitely doing all the things to become a folk hero in many ways, right? Like
He's the Banksy of
exactly.
video game world.
Look, I think it's I very much appreciate those kinds of approaches, which is like, no, I'm not really interested in all the stuff. Like, I'm making it because I want to make it, and if it does great, it does great, and so but like having good motivations for things, I think is great, and it does him no harm for people not to know his real name.
Yeah, I mean, congrats to Balatro. How many did they win? They won
3,
three.
I think. Yeah.
But obviously, like Astrobot had a huge night. Have you played Astrobot? I have not played Astrobot. I don't have a PlayStation.
No, I don't have a PlayStation either. But I everything I've seen about it, I understand why it's done so well. I do think if Indiana Jones had come out earlier in the year, maybe there would be a bit more competition. But
I was kind of hoping that Balatro would win Game of the Year, just because it's like small indie game, and I love Balatro so much. But it won a lot.
Yeah, it won a lot, and I think for a small game, I don't think you can complain too much.
Yeah, that's very true. Any other awards that you were surprised about? Or I was happy that Black Myth Wukong won. They won Best Action Game. Isn't like the first Chinese studio that won an award at the VGAs?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It is cool, and it goes back to the point I was making earlier, which is that games are pretty international. Maybe not as international as ultimately it could be.
It was also funny that he was like, "Our game's not hard."
that was just
our game's not hard.
But yeah, I mean, I think and the fact that they gave time for people to speak and get translated and those things, I think is important. I think that's goes back to how games are different than the Oscars or whatever, right? Like,
I liked all the translators. I thought that was wonderful. Kojima came up and presented.
Yeah.
Right. And it was not lost on me that Kojima looks great. Like he looks
very dapper.
Yeah. He's always been like really aware of his style. He's 61.
Mm-hmm.
He looks, I had to look up how old Kojima was, but I also noticed that his shiny brooch was 4 times the size of Jeff Keighley's. 4 times the size. He was not going to be outdone. But I thought he was amazing. It took an hour and 45 minutes before Kojima came out, and I thought that was much longer than I expected. I figured Kojima was going to be out in the first 30 minutes, honestly. So I had like a time to Kojima, and as soon as he came out, I was like an hour 45.
One thing I do appreciate about Jeff Keighley is that he has been very good at making good relationships with Japanese developers.
Yeah.
And hasn't been too parochial in terms of just being American devs. I know he's Canadian, but just American centric.
Like the North America, yeah.
And so I do think that that's actually to his credit. That he really has, had a good relationship with Japanese developers and developers in other regions as well.
Statler and Waldorf were making fun of him and saying like, Jeff Keighley is really good friends with Kojima, and then he was like, does Kojima know that? I like them taking the piss out of Jeff Keighley a bit.
But to get all those developers to your awards game,
absolutely
is great, and I think he's done a good job from that point of view. Definitely. Should we talk about our own awards?
Yeah. Okay. So we have. You guys know about the actual awards. Like, we're not going to go through all of the actual awards. Like, Astrobot won big, Balatro won big, Fallout won for best adaptation. Like, I don't think there were a whole bunch of surprises, honestly, last night.
The only surprise that wasn't a surprise was Harrison Ford getting somebody's name wrong.
Yeah, Melinda.
Yeah.
Melinda. But he came out and I thought Troy Baker did a really great job at his voice in the Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I also loved seeing Troy Baker next to Todd Howard, because Troy Baker is 6'3", 6'4", and Todd Howard is like 5'6", and it was great. I was like, oh, Tales of the Shire. but I mean, I'm the same height as Todd Howard, so I can't really talk. But the only one that I was surprised about, and I was very excited about it, best ongoing game.
Yes.
Helldivers 2 won that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that Helldivers 2 won it because I really like Helldivers 2. I thought Fortnite was going to get that. I'm surprised that they didn't get that just because Fortnite is just everywhere. Maybe it's just a false thing because they have so much money to just.
I think Fortnite have a similar issue to a bunch of like the EA Sports games where it's almost becoming invisible again.
Yeah,
that's why they advertise so hard.
Yeah, it's everywhere
because it's everywhere. But it's also nowhere.
Yeah,
because like it's just so pervasive.
But they have Snoop Dogg. They have concerts.
Sure.
They have Lego Fortnite.
But I think that's why it's hard for people to vote for them in terms of best things like ongoing game.
You can have a Nicki Minaj skin.
You can. I think there's always a little bit of underdog kind of nature to awards.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was just really excited when Helldivers 2 won. I was just like, hell yeah. So actually Hamish and I have some of our own awards to give out, and I'm going to call these the stupid little awards for the first annual Jess and Hamish Stupid Little Awards show. So we have our own awards that we would like to give out, and then we'll just do our I'd like to know what you liked the best about it and what you liked the worst about the award show. And then we will let everybody get back to their day. All right. So award number 1 is the best game that I played that didn't come out this year. What was your best game that you played that did not come out this year?
Yeah, so I went and played a game called Teardown, which
Teardown, the
voxel-based destruction game.
You know what that means, right? Voxels, voluptuous pixels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it came out a couple of years ago. I never got to play it when it came out. I think I might have played the demo.
It's an accidental heist game, right?
It's not accidental, but it's definitely it's what I love about it is like its sense of freedom, sense of player agency is wide enough that you go, I can do that, right? It's always a lovely feeling when a game like you feel like you have license to do things. I'm not saying every game has to be that and you can't be scripted, but I'm a big fan of these kind of sandboxy, just kind of, and anytime a game can surprise me in terms of like, it's following the rules in a way that's kind of delicious, is always exciting. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by Teardown. Not that I ever thought it was a bad game, but
I thought Teardown was so satisfying just because like it's called Teardown. You literally will be tearing down things, and it's voxels, so everything just kind of falls so beautifully, and you can destroy everything in the entire game. I really like watching. I find it very satisfying, and it is a bit anxiety inducing because you have timers on things, and it's just like but no, Teardown was great. My best game that I played this year that did not come out this year was Dredge. I played Dredge this year, and I loved it so much. It's a kind of relaxing sort of fishing sim, and then at night it's an eldritch horror, and there's a great.
It's a relaxing horror game.
Yeah, it's a relaxing horror game, and I don't actually play horror games. I like watching other people play horror games. I don't really play horror games myself these days, but it does turn into horror, but it's cozy horror, if that makes sense. Kind of, and it's so good because you're just this little boat. Like you can get on land and kind of talk to people, but you don't have a like body. I mean, I'm sure you do, but it doesn't show what you look like. There's no like protagonist that you tool around with. You're just on the boat, and it's really relaxing when you're just during the day trying to fish and trying to get all of these different fish, and some of them mutated, and sometimes Eldritch Horror tries to kill the boat. It's cool, but it was a lot of fun, and I thought that it was very well done, very, very well done game, and I enjoyed it immensely. Next one is best game to disassociate to because the world is just too much sometimes. Hamish, what is your winner for best game to disassociate to because the world is just too much sometimes?
Well, just to break the rules, I have 2.
Go for it.
So I've got on my iPad when I'm like going to sleep, bed. I play Slay the Spire.
Nice.
And then on my Mac laptop, I've got Balatro.
Balatro.
And Balatro is a real work killer to some extent. Like
Yeah,
if
it
I have
is.
5 minutes, I'm
Well,
like,
that's my winner. So we can just go ahead and talk about Balatro a little more.
Yeah. It's great. It's got a lot of in common with Slay the Spire in terms of just like different runs that can have different synergies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely that's definitely the common theme between them.
Yeah.
I also like I like sometimes watching it on YouTube and things as well, just in terms of like seeing how other people approach those things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Over Thanksgiving holiday, I was visiting family, my partner's family in Indiana, and I got my brother-in-law into playing Balatro because I was like, oh, it's on mobile. Like I play on the Switch, and I purposefully did not put it on my phone because I had to stop playing on the Switch because I was like, I have things I need to do. And I finally won a run. Like finally, it took me probably 4 or 5 days before I actually won a full run, but I felt so good after I finally won. And then I kept playing for a while, but then I was like, I need to just stop for a while. But I got him into it, and he was just like, "You bitch, how dare you?" He was playing at dinner, and his wife was just like, "We need to take care of our child."
Well, this
like,
is how far I've got. I've got all the decks up to the black stake.
Oh, nice. No, I do not have all of those.
And I've got one deck up to the gold stake.
Oh shit. I have like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But it's so good. I don't think we have to talk about how great Balatro is because just watch the Game Awards and you'll see how great Balatro is.
Yeah.
All right, the next one. It's kind of just for me. It's the best Power Wash simulator.
Well, I mean, there's Christmas DLC, right?
There's Christmas DLC. There was Halloween DLC. There was the Shrek DLC that was paid. It was a paid DLC this year. There was an Alice in Wonderland that was a paid DLC this year. But the Halloween and the Christmas is usually a free. It's just like one level, but it's a huge level. So Power Wash Simulator is the best Power Wash simulator this year and every year. And I couldn't go an entire episode without talking about it.
I mean, you can't go a whole day without talking about it. But
there are other Power Wash sims, though. They're Power Wash Simulator clones, and they're awful.
Well, I watch a bit of YouTube every now and again, and there's an advert for a mobile version of Thronefall.
Thronefall?
Yeah.
I don't know what
so
that
Thronefall is an indie dev. It's a real fun kind of strategy game, and somebody has ripped it off and then made a mobile version of it. And it's like heavily advertising on YouTube, and every time I see it, I'm like, because like it is very literally just a rip off Thronefall. So yeah, some of these clone copy things, it's like.
Yeah. Before Power Wash came to Switch, there was a bunch of like Switch clones, and I was just like, hell no.
Yeah.
I will wait.
Yeah.
Because it's the best. So, sorry, that was a little indulgent thing for me. Okay, so best trailer for a game that probably won't ship.
Yeah, I mean, I put the first Berserker Kazan because that was just CG.
Yeah.
And there was no gameplay. I think Intergalactic had at least some gameplay.
Yeah, mine was Intergalactic, and I mainly said that because it was kind of one of the trailers that got me most excited. And my luck is the ones that get me most excited are the ones that either don't come out or something terrible happens in development and it comes out and it's awful. Like what was it? Redfall? Was that when Redfall was announced and had that great trailer? I think that was 2021 E3, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember when it came out, but I think it got a good reception. Yeah. Yeah,
I remember when the trailer came out, it was like, oh, this looks fucking amazing. And then the game came out and everybody's like, oh no. So I'm hoping the Intergalactic is not that way, but I put it up here as my like best trailer for a game that probably won't ship because of my luck. So I hope that's not the case. The game that caused the most production meetings the week after it launched.
Yeah, best ongoing game.
Yeah. Yep. Helldivers 2. Yeah. I think both of us said Helldivers 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of production meetings did you have the week after that came out?
One of the things
if you could talk about it, no.
So one of the things about Helldivers 2 is that it nails a certain like chunkiness.
Yeah.
Right. It's very once again we'll talk a little bit about Indiana Jones, but the combat in Indiana Jones in a melee sense, Helldivers is a gun sense. Both of them are very satisfying in terms of like punching and shooting, and so that's really kind of a powerful thing. And then I think with Helldivers 2, there's just a little bit of like how bold they were with their structure.
Yeah.
And I think that's inspiring to some extent. Obviously, they've not always held on to their audience because you can't always keep that going. But it's definitely held on to audience longer than they would have done if they just had a traditional campaign structure and be done. So yeah.
And Helldivers 2 isn't even a game that I really play because I'm not one of the shooter players, but I still was just rooting for them so much because even though I'm not a shooter player, I could look at that game and I said to myself, if I like shooters, I bet that's fucking fun as hell.
It has an authenticity.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing about authentic and fake authentic and authentic fake and fake fake. And it's sufficiently authentic. It's not real, but it's authentic enough that it resonates hard.
Yeah.
And there's something very endearing about that, especially with the humor and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, it was so funny. And I was like, that looks like a fun ass game.
Yeah.
So yeah, Helldivers 2. So shout out to all the other game devs that were in meetings the week after that came out and being like, how do we do this? And like,
Elden Ring being a fun runner-up.
Yeah, Elden Ring.
But, yeah.
100%. Okay, our next one is Can I Pet That Dog? Have you seen that TikTok?
Yes. Yeah.
Can I pet that dog? It's everywhere.
Every time you can pet the dog is a good interaction.
Yeah. So there's this TikTok of this little girl and she's like super Southern and she just keeps saying, can I pet that dog? And her parents are like, no, can I pet that? And she just wants to pet the dog. It's a bear. It's a bear on the other side of the fence. It's just so funny. So this is the best pet interaction. So what do you have as like the best pet interaction?
I was saying every interaction you'd have like that is good. I'm not gonna rank them.
That's true. Well, my favorite that I played this year in Dragon Age Veilguard, when you're in your camp, there's a griffin named Asan, and you can interact with the griffin when you are in camp. And there's like 3 or 4 different animations. You can hug him, you can pet him, you can like ruffle his feathers, and it's so nice. And every time you go, if you walk by Asan and you don't pet him, you're a terrible person. I'm sorry. And I had a runner-up of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle because I haven't played this game yet, but I saw online where you can actually take photos of the cats.
Yeah.
And you get XP.
In the Vatican.
Yeah, for taking photos of the cats. And I'm just like, hell yeah. Let's take photos of all the Vaticats. But yeah, you're right. Anytime you can pet a dog or cat, it's the best. Okay, our the next one is the best award. So this was for like the actual best presentation of award at the award show. Like which award was given out was the most fun for you to watch.
Yeah, I had Harrison Ford coming out at the beginning of the best action game.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Like you weren't expecting him to be there, especially with Troy Baker. Like that could have gone weird so many ways.
Yeah,
and it was fine, other than the fact that
getting Melina's name wrong.
Yeah, we call him Melinda.
But at least it wasn't like an Adele Dazeem.
Oh no! It wasn't that bad.
It could have been worse.
It could have been worse. But also, like, I was expecting the awkwardness to come from Troy Baker doing the voice, and like. But Harrison Ford is actually like seems like a fun guy. Like, yeah, he seems like he's got a good sense of humor. So it's not, that. But yeah, it was good to see him out there, and I'm glad he was on the show, and yeah, I definitely thought, it's a good way to kick off.
Yeah,
I do find that some of the other ones, some of the bits being a little too, forced, like any award show, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. My winner for that one is I liked the Sam Lake coming out
I
for
did like that
for
one
best
too.
narrative. I thought it mostly worked. It mostly worked. They did the black and white and everything, and
The
it.
threatening to dance.
Yeah. I thought because I thought it was convincing and it was pretty funny, and he looks just like he did in Alan Wake 2. So I thought that was fun. I was like, let's have more of those. I can name probably on one hand the presenters that were kind of like fun and whimsical. So that was cool. So the next one is the 2024 Desert Island Award. Like, which award or which game would you want to have on a desert
I
island?
mean, we've talked about it already, but
yeah, we both have Bellatra for this one. Yeah, I mean, it would while the time away. And on this desert island, you can literally have, you can plug in anything that you need to plug in and play it all day and all night. So the last one is the best game that wasn't nominated for anything.
Yeah, I put Indiana Jones, and it wasn't nominated for anything on a technicality because obviously it came out too late.
Yeah. What is the cutoff?
When the nominations go up, which I think is because people vote on the.
It's what, like September or whatever?
No, it's later than that, but it's like October or something.
Okay.
But it also, because it came out now, by the time it gets around to next year's award season, I don't think
people are going to forget about it. Yeah.
So I feel like I want to put a little shine a light on it now. I've really enjoyed it. I think, it's easy to get cynical about games, but when games kind of embrace their material like that game has done, it's very enjoyable.
Yeah. I think next year, a bunch of people are going to be like, wait, didn't that win stuff last year? Because they're just going to remember that Harrison Ford came out and people were talking about the Great Circle of Harrison Ford in the Great Circle, Indiana Jones in the Great Circle. So yeah, that's good to call them out. I do hope they might win something next year because it is, I think people are most surprised by this game.
Well, yeah, Machine Games, who did Wolfenstein and so on, are known for very good first-person shooters who, linear, great games, but were kind of this linear experience. And Indiana Jones, obviously, is like more likely to be something you'd want in third person because you want to see the character and so on. And they've done a really good job of switching between first person and third person to make you feel like you're him, but you also like you really play as him rather than just kind of seeing an avatar of him.
You're in the movies, basically, is what I've heard.
Yeah. And then the second point is that structurally the game is way more like open than you would expect from a developer that did something like Wolfenstein. So, it's more like a mini Assassin's Creed, but like multiple levels. So there's lots of things to go find. There's lots of side missions, there's lots of stuff, but each location doesn't outlast its welcome too long. Like one of the issues you have with Assassin's Creed or whatever is it is very big, but it is just one space. You can get a little bit tired of it, and the distance you have traveled is quite far. Whereas because they've compacted it into a smaller space, but you have more of them, they're kind of parceling out the novelty like over time, and it's nicely paced. So yeah, I think everyone's very surprised about the structure. I think you shouldn't be surprised about the quality. Like
Machine
Games quality has been there, but it's more like pulling off a different kind of structure than they have.
I really like how you can literally pick up anything and chunk it at the head of someone.
Yeah, it has a weird kind of Dead Rising kind of feel to it in that sense of like improvised weapons, very satisfying interaction. You've got a stealth kill for every type of thing you can pick up. So like every time you do a kind of stealth kill, he'll do a different thing, which is quite a lot, lots of stuff. And he'll say equip or something like that. So there's lots of really satisfying stuff in it. And it's just, once again, the pacing is good. It's just fun. They've done a good enough job of, Troy Baker's voice on Indiana Jones is good enough. The graphics are very nice. It's the first game, I think, to demand you need ray tracing. Because they use global illumination, and that does a pretty good job. The only thing I would say is that visually, what it could do with, but obviously we don't have processing power, is to like, if you could deep fake on top of what they've already got in a kind of, not Rogue One, but like modern cinema kind of way, you would end up with something that was
It's just the movie.
Basically perfect. The thing that goes wrong that pulls you out of it being photoreal from Harrison Ford's face point of view is actually just around the eyes, like the eyelids and the white part of the eyes. It can look a little puppety, but it's not like the actual art is bad or the performance is bad or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just that, rendering just means that you can't quite.
Yeah, you're still going to have a little bit of uncanny valley there. I thought that I love voices and voice actors, and when I was first watching somebody play, I didn't know that Troy Baker was playing Indiana Jones at that point, but I was like, I know that's not Harrison Ford, but whoever is doing that is doing a really, really good Harrison Ford, because there are some points that it's just like, oh, it sounds just like him, and then at other points it's like, yeah, that's not Harrison Ford.
I think it's a good enough job that actually the voice isn't the thing that will pull you out of the fantasy.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the face like can a little bit. It can be like motion captured faces can also be a little wooden. You don't get all the micro expressions and things. So that can pull you out more than the voice does. At no point through this game have I been like, oh, the voice is wrong enough that I've cared.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to get somebody to do it, Troy Baker is the person.
Well, yeah, apparently Troy Baker was saying that he actually suggested two other people ahead of himself. And then the voice casting director was like, well, can you submit one? And he basically said to the voice casting director, if you like it, great. But if you don't submit it. Just like, I don't want to go through the thing of like, being scrutinized over something that I'm not saying I'm up for.
Yeah.
And apparently they loved it and he went forward with it. So like, Troy Baker is in every video game known to man, but he's one of the things he is very experienced about how that process works. And apparently he particularly loved how Machine Games did it, which is they actually had a DP on set.
Like when he was doing the motion capture?
Yeah.
Oh.
So because the beginning of the game, they actually recreate a lot shot for shot. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the beginning of the Raiders of the Lost Ark with the golden idol.
Yep.
They actually had a DP with them on shoot who was making sure that the blocking and the thing was all set up correctly.
That's awesome.
So it wasn't just acted, but it was also like properly blocked out in a way that maybe a lot of games will. It's the equivalent to saying we'll do it in post because you have virtual camera, you can place it wherever you want. But of course, that actually affects how you act, and so. He was saying that he really loved the fact that they had a DP on set and could actually really kind of capture it in that way, which shows the kind of preparation that Machine Games did. And I think that has a lot going for it. And the fact that Machine Games and the id Tech stuff, so they're using path tracing and all those things, which basically only Unreal and Cyberpunk currently have, really. The fact that they're competing at that level graphically as well is like, hey, look, Machine Games killing it right now, especially given their size and those things. Like, they're really competing with the boys. I'm gonna say Eastern Europe, but I don't know exactly where. Good
for them. Machine Games has always
Sweden.
Oh, okay. They've always had quality. Like, they've always been like super respected.
Bunch of ex-Starbreeze folks.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I should have known it Sweden actually. But yeah, so but they're just really talented group, and it reminds me a lot actually of Remedy.
Mm-hmm.
So Remedy are also a team that are independent. They have their own engine, but are still keeping up with the Joneses in terms of all that high tech stuff, and like Alan Wake 2 and those things look fantastic. There's a few groups out there who are really holding their end up in terms of these custom engines. I'm really glad that Machine Games with id Tech and those things are really had an opportunity to make something that looks really good, and not lose the gameplay in the process. Like, actually really get the gameplay in good shape.
I hope that they're not forgotten next year then. I mean,
I think they will be, but it's okay because I think they've done such a good job of the game that it kind of doesn't, like, this is the thing, is like to tell you the truth, awards don't matter. Right?
They did get recognition
exactly
this year.
And actually...
And what could they do next year that's bigger than bringing Harrison Ford out, maybe?
Right, but also, like, if they won an award next year, no, like, their next project won't suddenly have more hype just because it's because the game was good, not because of the awards.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, ultimately, as I'm saying, it's like what matters is the actual quality of the product rather than, if you get some awards for it, great. I mean, that's cool. That's not going to do any harm. But really, it's about how good the game is and whether and people will remember that Machine Games had killed it this time around. And so that's obviously going to make a big difference in terms of their next project, because people are going to go, oh, they didn't just do Wolfenstein, they didn't just do Indiana Jones. It opens up a lot of doors for them in ways that, that's the reward for doing a good job.
Yeah.
Right? You're only as good as your last game. If your last game is great, well, that opens up a lot of doors. So yeah, and I think that id Tech is looking pretty sweet as well. So that I think I like the idea that there's a few competitors to Unreal in terms of just keeping up with the Joneses of those things, even if production costs are kind of crazy,
skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Well, so my best game that wasn't nominated for anything this year is a little game called Thank Goodness You're Here, which if you haven't played it, I don't want to spoil it for you. It is one of the funniest things that I have ever seen in my entire life. It's a short game. It's cartoony sort of game. I don't want to say too much if you haven't played it, but just play Thank Goodness You're Here. I promise you will not regret it. It's 2.5 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. It's very, very short. It's just wonderful. And I wish that there could have been a category that it could have been nominated for something. Thank goodness you're here. Please play it. It's so funny. I played it on a flight, and I was finished with it by the time the flight was over. And you won't regret it. It's the best. It's the best. Yeah. So that's all of our Jess and Hamish stupid little awards. Hamish, I would love to know, like, what was your favorite thing? What was some of your main takeaways from last night?
Main takeaways. I think there is still a lack of contemporary games. I think that I'd love to see more. I think the kind of fantasy and sci-fi is a little bit saturated. I'm excited to see what Naughty Dog bring to sci-fi.
Yeah.
And I think, despite all the layoffs, I do think the industry is in fairly rude health, given the number of announcements and the amount of stuff. I think
crossing fingers.
Yeah, I think it's the classic thing of, like, more games are coming out than ever. So that hasn't slowed down by any stretch of imagination. I think the Game Awards are gradually finding a format that works, although I still think there's work to be done there. So that's the other big take there. And then as a developer, I'm really happy that we got to see some folks celebrated, long that may continue.
Yeah. One of my main takeaways is that apparently purple is the color for everything now. I just kept noticing in all the different trailers, like one of the main accent colors for everything is just purple. So if you're doing a game trailer right now and you're putting a whole bunch of purple in it, good job. You're on brand.
Well, I mean, you should definitely... You familiar with the song Start Wearing Purple?
No.
It's a thing. I will send it to you later. If you want to enjoy...
Is it all about being royalty?
No.
Because purple used to be the color of royalty.
It's it goes, start wearing purple. Start wearing purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish. I promise. It's just a matter of time.
Just for wearing purple?
Yep. It's a whole song about wearing purple. It is fantastic, and I will send it to you. So,
yes, please do that.
Yes. You won't get it out of your head. That's the only downside.
But in all seriousness, I do agree with you that, like, I'm hoping that the video game industry is kind of... I mean, we'll see what the next year and a half does, but I would love to see things kind of going in an upward progression again, as far as, like, people getting jobs, and I'd like to see the layoffs at least slowing down. That would be nice.
I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but I want the industry to be creatively vibrant.
Yeah.
because that's the source of everything. Like, it's one thing whether, things get too big, things get too small. But if the vibrancy gets lost, then the long term you'll lose the war, as they say. Let's make sure that we invest in creative teams that can do great work. And I think this Local Thunk is a good example of you don't need huge teams to make great games.
God, Balatro is great. Play Balatro. Well, that's I think we got through everything.
We did. We were comprehensive.
Very comprehensive. We went through like every announcement, and most of the awards. We at least talked about some of the awards. So, where can the listeners find you, Hamish, if you want them to find you?
I'm as I said, my
your first one.
I'm happy to just lurk. So it's all good.
That's totally fine.
I'm not quite Local Thunk level, but
I do. It'd be great if he just kind of became the Banksy of game dev.
Love it.
Good on you, Local Thunk. And I did like the.
By the way, I am not Local Thunk. Just to be clear.
The woman who came up that accepted the award for the gentleman that was on behalf of Local Thunk, she had one of the little jokers, and I was just like, "Are they going to sell those?"
They may do. Yeah,
that would be great because you could collect all of them. They're so okay. Yeah. Do that. So you can find me on Blue Sky. I am at caketease.bluesky.social. I'm also on Instagram at cake_tease. I've completely taken my Twitter account down because fuck Twitter. This is probably the last episode for this year, probably, because this is going to be coming out the week before Christmas. So we're going to be taking a couple of weeks off because it's real hard to get people in a Zoom call for a couple of hours around the holidays. They should be hanging out with their families, and people are busy. So we're going to be back in January with some new episodes, and it's going to be fun. So thanks to everybody who's been listening. If you want to leave a review, that would be wonderful. We're still kind of a new podcast, and reviews really do help get us into some algorithms and get us in front of people. So that would be wonderful. Also, I just want to say thank you so much to Hamish for coming on, my first repeat guest.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear all about Hamish's story and getting into games and all the cool and amazing, or not all of them, but a lot of the cool and amazing games that he worked on, please go back and listen to the very first episode. It's a good time. We get into talking about all kinds of things, and we play a stupid little game all about racing games. So again, just thank you for coming back on and taking the time, because taking the time, not only did I ask Hamish to come over and actually record with me, this also meant that he had to watch the entire Game Awards last night and take copious notes, which helped us out a lot when we were actually doing the episode. So thank you for doing that. And yeah, maybe we'll have you come back on in a couple months for something else.
I'd love to be back.
Let's see if I can do this acknowledgements without my notes. So this podcast is hosted and executive produced by me. I'm Jess Pardue. Our logo and theme song is done by the incomparable Bayard Russell. Thank you so much, because I love the theme song so much. Audio engineering and final editing is done by Gabe Koski, a man who looks like he was drawn with the left hand. So I will see you not next Tuesday. I will see you next year. Goodbye.
Bye.